With me now is Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney, Democrat from New York, member of the House Intelligence Committee, which means he's been in these closed-door hearings. And Congressman, we've seen you've had quite a few interesting exchanges in here. Let me start with the decision to go public with the hearings. Bill Taylor, George Kent, how many public witnesses do you expect to see to get called up there?
Well, enough to get the American people the full picture. I think you're not talking about dozens. You're talking about a relatively small number. And they are very powerful witnesses. You know, Bill Taylor is not just some bureaucrat. Bill Taylor is a West Point grad. I represent the United States Military Academy. It's my honor to do so. The guy's a West Point grad, served with the 101st Airborne as an infantry officer in Vietnam. I mean, while Donald Trump was avoiding military service, Bill Taylor was getting shot at, and he's put 40 years in, not just in the military, but in the foreign service. This is a deeply credible, knowledgeable person, and he tells a heartbreaking story where he reluctantly, almost belatedly, after taking over for Ambassador Yovanovitch, realizes what is happening, and he does everything he can to stop it, to work within the system, to bring it to his superiors. And he belatedly realizes that there is a quid pro quo being demanded of a country, as he points out, that is fighting the Russians in a shooting war right now. And he understands what that military assistance means to the freedom and security of that country. And he tells a very powerful story. I'm glad that the public's going to see it.
Let me put up an exchange you had with him on sort of reinforcing that Burisma was a bit of a code word for Biden's. Ambassador Taylor, as I understood, the reason for investigating Burisma was to cast Vice President Biden in a bad light. Then you respond, that would be the domestic political gain? Taylor says yes. And you reinforce this to cast Vice President Biden in a bad light. He says right. And the political campaign would be what political campaign, you ask? And then he simply says a political campaign for the reelection of President Trump. It sounds like in Bill Taylor you have somebody that isn't subtle, that doesn't speak in sort of that Washington speaks sometimes, where he's trying to round the edges. He seems like a very matter-of-fact witness here. Do you expect him to be that in public?
I sure hope so. And not because I want him to say anything in particular, but because guys like Bill Taylor don't pull their punches. They have a clear sense of right and wrong. And when he saw it, he knew what it was. But his language was important there because it explodes this nonsense that the Republicans have been pushing, that this was a generic concern about corruption, that they just wanted investigations. Ambassador Taylor chose specific words. He said this was about political gain. This was about advantage in a political campaign. So my questions were designed to get at exactly what he meant. He didn't say investigations. He didn't say just Burisma. He made crystal clear that he knew that there was a quid pro quo being demanded. He puts it together very clearly, a quid pro quo that would benefit the president personally, politically, and it's wrong.
You know, another thing that jumped out at us, that apparently Taylor testified that in June, Gordon Sondland requested that the phone call not be transcribed at all, that no notes or there wouldn't be any monitoring of it at all. That seemed to be new to us.
Right, and there's a term for that. It's called consciousness of guilt. It's one of the first red flags that went up for Ambassador Taylor. He knew it didn't make sense, and that's when his antenna started to work. And in a straight line from that point, he starts to put together the sad truth, the truth that should break everyone's heart who cares about things being done the right way, that there was this grimy financial interest by Rudy Giuliani and his now indicted clients mixed up in this toxic brew with the president's shabby political interests, and they were pushing that and displacing the very serious national security policy that was critical to the defense of Europe and Ukraine and to our own national security. And as he watched it unfold, he brought it to Pompeo. He tried to do something about it. He tried to see it in the best possible light until it was unmistakable that it was wrong.
All right, a few things about the hearings next week. Number one, any reason why you're skipping Thursday, or is that just a scheduling issue?
I don't have an answer for you on that. I defer to the chairman. But remember, we've got a limited capacity down there, and our staff has been doing heroic work. My guess is that we're trying to do this in a professional, measured way. And but I don't have a specific answer on that.
Gordon Sondland going to be in front of TV cameras?
I sure hope so. I think Ambassador Sondland is an important witness. Obviously, now that he's cleaned up his testimony and aligned himself with the sworn accounts of other witnesses, he becomes a more credible witness to the extent that that testimony is corroborated by everything else we know. But he has an important role in all this. And remember, he's a political appointee. He's an ally of the president.
Yeah.
He basically bought this ambassadorship for $1 million. But he was about to buy a perjury charge, and he is clearly sobered up and is telling an important part of this story.
Do you expect anybody else that you've deposed to come in and correct their transcript?
You know, that's an interesting question. I hope not. I hope that the witnesses who've appeared before us took it seriously. I think there are people like Mr. Morrison, who's a lifelong Republican, very conservative individual, worked for 17 years for Republicans on the Hill, but he showed up, he answered a lawful subpoena, and he gave his testimony. I didn't necessarily agree with everything he said, or even the connotation of some of the things he said, but the point is he was there under oath. I don't know of another witness who had as big a problem as Ambassador Sondland, let me put it that way.
Okay.
And I'm glad the ambassador has taken steps to correct his testimony.
Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney is from Democrat from New York. Thanks for coming on and sharing your views. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.